It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
Hey guys, how's it going? It's Wednesday, November 9th, and this is the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. We're on YouTube, so make sure to subscribe, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So what is happening on this wonderful Wednesday? We've got current news from around the world, the word study on the background of the book of Jude, and health is happiness with Julius Miumo from Australia. Oh, right, everyone, how are you doing today? It is Wednesday, and I'm just thankful for all of you joining us here on the Morning Star Drive. Yes, starting from November, we do have a new format with like Wednesday messages and morning messages. So we do know that Sunseam's videos will be played 2 times a month for Wednesdays on the first and third week, and also in the pre-dawn every Tuesday, but not this week. It starts from next week, I believe. But it's really, really awesome that we're able to see his face once again. And I'm super thankful that even though the situation is the way it is, we've gone through this before, and we're able to kind of look back on how we did our things in the past and doing it the same way we're doing now. And I really think it's a blessing that we're able to still see him even though he's in this situation. And I hope that everyone is really praying for him at this time. Like I said a couple days ago, the first trial is going to be on the 18th of November, and we'll just really pray for that first trial to go really well. All right. And of course, I want to remind everyone to just keep liking and commenting. I want to hear from you guys and see how you're doing. Write your questions, requests, testimonies, anything. Just build this community. If you're on SoundCloud, go ahead, leave likes and comments too. We just love to hear what your response and feedback is to the content that we have. And even more so, I just think it's good that all of us are able to speak in a community and talk to each other. And those of you guys who are already commenting, I think it's great that you comment on other people's comments too. Just, talk about their segments, the things that they're doing also. I think they would love to hear from you guys also. All right? Also, tomorrow is questions for Q&A Thursday. Some questions have already come in. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments or DM me also. I would love to help out as much as I can. Those of you who asked questions last week that I didn't get to, please send those questions to me again. Because there's just so many different things coming in right now. If you have already sent me a question, please send it. Please send it again. I just so that I can get just to remind me, like, oh yeah, there was this question here. All right. So here I am in Malaysia. It's been I got here on Saturday, so it's been Saturday would be 1 week. Then it'll be Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Yeah, so then it's already like I've been here for over 10 days, and of course I have no jet lag whatsoever, and I'm getting into a good routine, playing sports, getting coffee, meeting members. Yesterday I went to go play badminton. That was pretty cool. I went to play with a good friend that was also doing YouTube the same time I was starting, and they do badminton every single Monday. They invite other influencers and people from YouTubers, TikTokers to play and talk after. And I was really able to meet some other people there too. And it was it was really interesting. We went to go play badminton. These are all these other influencers, stuff like that. We go to eat after. Okay. And it was really interesting because it was just fun talking about nonsense. I don't know if this makes sense to you guys, but we weren't talking about anything meaningful. It was just getting to know each other, talking, laughing, making fun of each other. I loved it. And for me, it was kind of freeing. I really felt like I could be myself, right? I could really, really be myself. And now, I'm going to say this, but don't take this the wrong way. Like, I'm not saying this in a bad way. I felt I could be myself. It was very freeing to talk about the things I could, and just, it doesn't have to be so spiritual and stuff like that either all the time, right? But of course it's different because I'm with worldly people and stuff. But the reason I bring this up is because my whole life was in a church setting, and it was always had a mission, always had expectations, always things like, when you have a mission, say if you're a head leader, or your headquarters, or a campus department leader, whatever it is, because of that responsibility we have, there are things we can and cannot do, right? And I'm not saying this is bad at all. I think this is normal. Like, if you're a president of the United States or president of any country, there should be some way you're supposed to be acting. Like, you can't be acting like an idiot or something like that, right? So, I'm not saying anything bad about it, but I'm just realizing more and more, like, wow, when people have responsibility, it's such a powerful thing to have responsibility. Responsibility actually changes you in different ways. And I'm not going to say it's a bad thing. I think actually responsibility is going to help people in very, very good ways. For instance, let me give an example. When people like get big responsibility, like imagine you become a parent, you're married, you have more responsibility, you have children, you have more responsibility, and you have to take care of that child. You cannot do the things that you want to do, but it's a good thing, right? There is a huge power in responsibility. It can change people in a very, very good way. Of course, there's negatives about it too, but it can happen in a very good way, right? And I thought about this because I'm like, wow. When I was head leading, when I was doing like all the other work in those big missions, yeah, I was constantly in that responsibility. And it reminded me like, when you look at your head leaders, if you're constantly in that responsibility mode without any breaks, it's tough. It can take its toll, right? And this is why people burn out. And I really hope that those of you guys who are, have the like, what's that word? Influence in the church, that you can give your head leaders a break, at least an entire day off every week, right? It's not any different than like if we expect our head leaders to be on all the time. I call you at 2 a.m., you got to pick up, you got to come over and do this, you got to do, if we had that type of expectation, then you should put the same expectation on yourself. Meaning, then why don't you work 7 days a week? You know what I mean? Why don't you work 7 days? And you should be okay with your boss calling you to come in at 2 a.m. You know what I mean? But we work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. That's our work schedule. And we get the weekends off. We get like 2 days off. You know what I mean? So when you think about this, we have to think about our head leaders too. They need that day off. They need a day to decompress. It's really, really difficult to be always on mission point. It's tough. It is. And like I'm saying is, I went to this and I just realized for that one moment, like sometimes I just need to talk about, make fun of people, make fun of myself, laugh and joke around. And these were people that I've met for the first time, some of these people, right? And I was just looking at this like, yeah, this is something that we really have to think about a lot more carefully. And I hope that we can also think about, if we put some type of expectation on these head leaders or leaders above us, then in order to make it fair, if you're going to treat a head leader or a leader in a very strict, like, oh, you should be doing this, you should be doing this, then you have to apply that same principle to yourself. If you're going to take breaks, then you should be giving your head leader breaks. If you're not going to answer the phone when your boss calls after 6 p.m., then you should not expect the head leader to pick it up after 6 p.m. You know what I mean? Like there has to be that real expectation where a head leader, yes, that's their mission, but it doesn't mean it's 24/7. I think that would be very, very unfair. And this is probably why a lot of head leaders, a lot of leaders will start burning out, and you're not going to have head leaders for very, very long, right? So that's something that I was just thinking about as I was talking to these people in a very normal and being myself way. And I hope it's something that we can do for our leaders too, so that they can have that time of break off too. All right. Today, also, Health is Happiness, another great episode happening on episode made by Julius. And it's going to be, I think, the 7th part of managing your weight, but he's going to talk about flexible dieting today. So that is a cool topic. I want to hear this one too, flexible dieting. A lot of people on the voting on the poll for your favorite beverage, your preferred beverage of choice, your beverage, right? And a lot of it's changed. It's slowly changing here and there. Tea has jumped up to 37%, coffee's at 27%, and water's at 22%. Honestly, I would think that the number one drink of choice should be water. It is a source of life. However, when it comes to preferred, it means which one would you rather have, like drink and you like the taste and everything else? Yeah, I would say it's coffee. I'm surprised juice is not very high. It's coffee, tea, or water. Those are the three top ones. Just those three there is 86%. 86% is those three, and the majority come into tea. I didn't know tea was that popular. Do we have a lot of English people that are voting here? Right? Because tea, I don't find tea very like a preferred beverage. I find it something that's more special for me. Like coffee is a daily thing, water's a daily thing, but not the other ones. But either way, not tea and juice. I don't really drink juice that much anymore, especially after listening to some health people saying that no, don't make smoothies, don't make them into drinks unless you have the skin that's in there too when you grind up the fruit and stuff. So I'm just like, yeah, okay. So I'm more into coffee and water. And if I had a choice of water, it would be sparkling water. Ooh, yeah. But you know what? In Malaysia, they don't have sparkling water here. Like, not like in Canada, in America, where you have like Buble and all these other canned soda water kind of thing. I maybe have to buy that soda water, soda pop, whatever it is, the thing that puts carbonation into water. Maybe I should buy that, and it'll be a lot easier for me to drink that instead. Either way. Tomorrow there should be on Friday. So those of us in Asia, there should be a new video coming out. But it's been so crazy for me. I got to make a new video, but I don't want to make a video, but you know what I mean? Like, everything's so fresh and new, and I'm still getting into my groove, but I'm into my groove now, so I got to start making that video, so I'm going to make a video today. I have to. I have no choice, either way. All right, so let's get into some music from member artists from around the world, right? Who is today's featured artist of the day on this wonderful and, someone said the other words, whimsical and wacky and wonderful Wednesday. Our featured artist of the day is AG from Japan. He takes Providence music and he makes it into like EDM, trance, house, hip-hop, and stuff like that. So the song we're going to hear today, one of my favorites from AG, is Tears of God. After that, we have Young Se from South Africa with the song No Gain in Complaining. And we'll end things off with Zeniac from the Paper Music Associates in Korea with Eternal Self.
Looking for faults, flaws, and mistakes, causing some mistakes on a beautiful scene. God, Holy Spirit, and Holy Son, Lord, blessing me. Truly, it's like a dream, but if my thoughts ain't right, things don't look right. It's all about the windows that I look through, determines how I see what's true. Complaining, complaining, there is just no gaining. Complaining, 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 it's draining my strength and my powers. It's what complaining devours. Rather raise a praise for what God has made ours. Now whatever comes at me, whatever surrounds me, whether I feel captured or whether I feel free, it's totally up to me. Cause you see, heaven's in the heart, and that's the art that the Lord has shown. No matter what's thrown at him, he always has a thanksgiving hymn to sing, glory to God to bring. What a happy human being. Complaining, complaining, there is just no gaining. Complaining, complaining, complaining is draining my strength and my powers. Is what complaining devours. Rather raise a praise for what God has made ours. Love, grace, forgiveness really given to me. So if I'm feeling down, gotta check what I see. Could I be blinded by my negativity? It gets in the way of feeling how they're blessing me. Yeah. Complaining, complaining, there is just no gaining. Complaining, complaining, complaining is draining my strength and my powers. It's what complaining devours. Rather raise a praise for what
And that was Xeniac from PMA in Korea with Eternal Self. Before that, it was Youngse from South Africa with No Gain and Complaining. That's a new song that came out within the last 3 weeks. And of course, AG from Japan with the song Tears of God, and that is the EDM mix for that, all right? So let's get into some news going on around the world. What is happening around the world? And as brides of this history, we have the responsibility, that word comes up again, responsibility to pray for this world. But in order to pray for it, we really need to know what is happening and what is going on. And that's why we watch the world news, right? 3 reasons: see what we need to report and pray for. 2, see what God is doing. And 3, what are the things we can comfort God's heart in? So let's start off with UK and, the Ukraine and Russia. And it seems that the U.S. confirms communications with the Kremlin. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan has confirmed communication channels between Washington and Moscow remain open despite the war in Ukraine. Speaking in New York, Sullivan said it was in the interest of the U.S. to maintain contact with the Kremlin, but he insisted officials were clear-eyed about who we are dealing with. It comes as the White House refuses to deny reports that Sullivan has been leading talks with Russia to prevent a nuclear escalation in Ukraine. The Wall Street Journal reports that Sullivan has held confidential discussions with his Russian counterpart, Security Council Secretary Nikolai Patrushev, and senior Kremlin foreign policy aide Yuri Ushakov over the past several months. Senior officials told the paper the men had discussed ways to guard against the risk of nuclear escalation in the war in Ukraine, but had not engaged in any negotiations around ways to end the conflict. Last month, Sullivan said any use of nuclear weapons would have catastrophic consequences for Russia. He told the U.S. broadcaster NBC that senior officials had spelled out the scope of the potential U.S. response in private discussions with Russian officials. The U.S. National Security Council spokesman Adrian Watson refused to confirm the story, telling the paper that people claim a lot of things, while Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov accused Western newspapers of publishing numerous hoaxes. But White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said on Monday that the United States reserved the right to hold talks with Russia. And Mr. Sullivan, who is said to be one of the most senior advisors to U.S. President Joe Biden, still pushing for discussions with Russia, said maintaining contact with Moscow was in the interests of every country who is affected by this conflict. Last week, the Washington Post reported that senior U.S. officials were urging Kyiv to signal an openness to hold negotiations with Russia and drop their public refusal to discuss an end to the war while President Putin remained in power. But Sullivan told a public event in New York that the Biden administration had an obligation to pursue accountability and pledged to work with international partners to hold the perpetrators of grave and grotesque war crimes in Ukraine responsible for what they have done. Concerns have been heightened in recent months that Russia could resort to using nuclear weapons in a desperate attempt to defend 4 regions of eastern and southern Ukraine that it illegally annexed. Meanwhile, Ukraine has invoked its wartime martial laws to take control of the assets of 5 strategically important companies. Some of the companies, which include 2 energy companies and firms that make engines, vehicles, and transformers, are linked to oligarch Vyacheslav Bohuslayev, who was arrested on suspicion of collaborating with Russia. President Zelensky said the move would help Ukraine's defense sector meet the needs of the military, which is currently engaged in counteroffensives in southern and eastern Ukraine. So that is some good news there, that there is communication, and we're hoping that all of this gets resolved, and nuclear, there will be no results of nuclear weapons being used. All right, so let's move into Pakistan. Big shock as and condemnation over attack on the Pakistan ex-PM Imran Khan. Now, this happened a couple days ago, where an attack on Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan, which supporters say was an attempted assassination, has drawn international condemnation. Khan, 70 years old, is recovering in hospital after being shot in the leg on Thursday at a protest march in Wazirabad in the northeast of the country. 1 person was killed and at least 10 injured in the attack on his convoy. Khan is in stable condition, his team say, and could potentially be discharged in the coming days. The attack on Khan has electrified the country, which the cricketer turned politician led until April, when he was ousted by a parliamentary vote of no confidence. Schools were closed in the capital, Islamabad, after his party, the PTI, Pakistan Tehreek Tehreek-e-Insaf called for nationwide protests following Friday prayers. President Arif Alvi, a founding member of the PTI, called it a heinous assassination attempt. Khan's political opponents have also been quick to condemn the attack, with Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif ordering an immediate investigation. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken called for calm, saying, "Violence has no place in politics, and we call on all parties to refrain from violence, harassment, and intimidation." Pakistan, which is reeling from an ongoing economic crisis and devastating floods, has a record of political violence, with former Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto assassinated in 2007. Many evoked her killing in the wake of the attack on Mr. Khan. So how did this attack unfold? Well, Khan, who has been fighting to return to office since he was ousted earlier this year, had been leading a long march of protests calling for early elections to facilitate his comeback. By Thursday, his convoy had reached Wazirabad, where crowds had gathered to hear him speak. He stood on top of an open truck bed surrounded by aides and his other party members when the shots rang out. It was so sudden that it took a while to understand what was going on, and this is what everyone was saying when all the shots were heard. However, from their vantage point, they were able to pick out the attacker, and they saw the attacker had emptied a whole magazine, and he had loaded another magazine when he was grabbed by a boy from behind. Unverified videos on social media show an assailant in the crowd pointing his pistol at Mr. Khan's convoy before being overpowered by Mr. Khan's supporters. Footage of the incident and witness accounts suggested a security guard was also seen firing from the container. And they also said that Mr. Khan and those around him ducked quickly after the first shots, and when he was hit, he remained calm while he was given first aid by his bodyguards. He was then moved into a bulletproof car and rushed away to hospital in Lahore. Punjab Chief Minister Pervez Elahi has suggested there may have been more than one attacker, saying Khan had been shot in the leg from the front, while the alleged attacker who was caught on the spot was on the right side. So it's getting pretty crazy right now. I had this conversation with another friend of mine about what is happening all around the world, and it's pretty crazy because, like, even in Korea, can you imagine what's going on even in Providence? Like, you can't help but think about it, because in Providence, in Korea, you're worried about North Korea firing these missiles. On top of it, you had the Itaewon thing going on, like the big crush. And then you have the pandemic going on, and then you have Sunseam situation. So imagine all these things going on at the same time. And this is happening all around the world. And you can see that there's a lot of chaos and confusion. And you know that Satan's working in people's minds, and we have to be the ones that go against it. Okay, we have to pray and make sure the Holy Spirit comes and brings order to this confusion. Last on today's world news, we're going to go to Dominican Republic as floods are setting in. At least 6 killed in rains. At least 6 people have been killed after torrential rains caused havoc in the Dominican Republic. On Friday, some areas of the capital, Santo Domingo, saw twice the monthly average rainfall in one day. Meteorologists said that while they had been aware of heavy rains approaching, they had been surprised by the strength of the sudden downpour. Poor drainage meant that the water accumulated quickly, turning streets into quick-flowing torrents. In some parts of Santo Domingo, there was about 232 millimeters of rain, fell in a matter of hours, twice the estimate for the entire month. This comes from the Weather Bureau Director, Gloria Sabalos. Several people are still missing, and of the 6 people who died, 2 drowned, 2 were electrocuted, and 2 were crushed by collapsing walls. Hundreds of homes have been damaged, and the agriculture sector has also been hit hard. President Luis Abinader said an estimate of the damages would be released on Tuesday, and he added that poor drainage had compounded the flooding in the capital, and it's a problem that continued to grow. The city and greater Santo Domingo area grew without a real drainage system. So there it is, guys. That is the top 3 news going around the world. I hope it's something that you guys will keep in mind and understand that we do need to pray more and more. Climate change is a big thing that's going on right now around the world, but I hope that all of us too will do our research and know that, this is something that Sunseam spoke about also, and we have to be those that are in line with what God wants, okay? So there it is. That is the world news. Let's go into some sporting news. UEFA Champions League, the knockout round of 16 draw has been set. So we have some big key matchups. You have Manchester City playing against RB Leipzig. So that should be an easy match for Manchester City. Liverpool versus Real Madrid. That's going to be a huge and big one. Tottenham plays against AC Milan. Chelsea against Borussia Dortmund. And big matchup also is PSG, Paris Saint-Germain versus Bayern Munich. So those are some of the big matchups that they have there. So let's see what happens during that time. In NHL news, we had 3 games on the slate the other day. Boston beat St. Louis 3-1. The New York Islanders beat the Calgary Flames 4-3 in overtime. That's Noah Dobson with the overtime winner on the power play. And last but not least, we have Washington defeating the Edmonton Oilers 5-4. And of course, Connor McJesus, 1 goal, 1 assist in the losing effort, but he is adding to his scoring lead. In NFL news, it was Monday Night Football. Baltimore Ravens defeat the New Orleans Saints 27-13. Lamar Jackson had 133 yards passing, which isn't very good, but he had 82 yards rushing. So, he's like the leading rusher of all quarterbacks all time. He's amazing in that. And now Baltimore moves to 6-3, and they're first in the AFC North, and the New Orleans Saints move to 3-6, and they are third in the NFC South. All right, so there it is, guys. That is the top 3 news in sports and around the world. Hope you guys really enjoyed that. But you know what that means. It is the golden time. And yes, it is the golden time, a time of praise and worship to the Holy Trinity. Hope all of you guys are looking forward to giving glory to God and the Holy Spirit. So, what are we going to praise and worship today? We're going to start off with a good fast song, Life of Heaven, and then My Beloved is the Best, and we'll break things down with Thanksgiving of Love. So, as one body of the Morning Star Drive, let's spend this time giving praise, honor, and glory to the Holy Trinity.
The rapture here on earth, and it's a life of heaven.
Everything God created in this whole world, earth, sea, and sky, it's heaven on earth. Wherever we are, if we serve the Lord, if we live as one, it becomes heaven on the earth. Everything God give thanks with joy, pray and converse without end. In the past, Almighty God, Holy Spirit, omniscient, omnipotent, in their perfect love, they were by our side, always helping. In their grace they saved us from the life of death, and they helped us countless times. They saved our lives, they poured out their love. So we give glory and thanks. All the money in the whole world couldn't repay all they've done for us. We will show our thanks only through love. Our hearts burning, we'll give thanks daily, thinking of their love. We will always give thanks with all our love. So today, let's give thanks with sincere hearts. We shall give thanks and glory for the grace. Give thanks, glory for their love. Give thanks. We were saved by the Trinity. They saved us body and spirit. So in this life and in spirit for eternity, we will serve God, we will serve the Holy Spirit and the Holy Son forever, forever, for all time. Since they saved our bodies and spirits for the grace, whatever may happen as we live on this earth, in the good times and in the bad, give thanks, glory, glory, live rejoicing, live each day praising the heavens. And today, God and the Holy Spirit speak to us these words of
And that was Thanksgiving of Love. What a great song. Before that, My Beloved is the Best, and of course, Life of Heaven. All right, so let's get into today's word study. And of course, every single Wednesday, we go into the scriptures or the book, or, there's a lot of different things that we're going to go into. But today, there is kind of one of these small books that we don't talk about that much, and it's the book of Jude. Right? So today we're going to go in the background and origin of where did this book come from, who wrote it, okay? And a very, very interesting book, by the way, okay? So let's get into the book of Jude. Who is the author? The author identifies himself as Jude, a servant of Jesus Christ and brother of James. Okay, this is at the very beginning of the book, Jude, well, there's only one chapter, so it's at the very beginning. And the name Jude is actually short for Judas, and it's not Judas Iscariot, okay? So Jude, this is in Greek text, okay? So there are 5 Judases in the New Testament, and the most well-known is, of course, Judas Iscariot, the betrayer. And it would be unthinkable for any writing by him to be included in the New Testament, so it's not going to be him. And there was another Judas to whose house in Damascus Paul went to after his conversion, but nothing else is known about that Judas. There was a Judas Barsabas, who took the letter from the Jerusalem council to the Gentile churches along with Silas. That's in Acts chapter 15. And another of the 12 disciples was also called Judas, carefully distinguished from Judas Iscariot, also known as Thaddeus. Okay, so you're going to see that there's 2 different names in the New Testament. It's either in Matthew or Luke, and it's the same disciples, but some of them, they go by their Hebrew name or their Greek name, right? So the Judas in Luke, in Matthew, he's called Thaddeus, okay? But there is no tradition for him writing the book of Jude. So the most likely author was Judas, brother of Jesus. Like, this is actually Jesus' half-brother who's mentioned in the list of Jesus' brothers. And you'll find that in Matthew chapter 13, verse 55. So in his letter, Jude introduces himself as the brother of James. Now, only James, the brother of Jesus and leader of the church in Jerusalem, was well known enough to be referred to simply as James. Jude was content to be known as James's brother, as he was not so well known himself. But before the resurrection, Jesus' family did not believe who he was. Okay, so in John chapter 7, verse 5, even his brothers didn't believe that Jesus was the Messiah and tried to seize him because they thought he was crazy. Now, after the resurrection, Jesus appeared to James, who became the leader of the Jerusalem church, presiding over the Council of Jerusalem. And there is no other mention of Jude or Judas except a vague reference when Paul says that the brothers of the Lord have the right to be accompanied by a wife on their travels for the gospel. Okay, so we're most likely looking at Jesus' half-brother. Okay, half-brother, which is Jude or Judas, okay? So there is a lot of external evidence of who he is too, because there were other writers of the early historians like Origen, Eusebius, Jerome, that all wrote about him too. Clement of Alexandria also wrote about Jude too. So very, very interesting that there is external evidence that this is Jesus' half-brother. So what is the occasion of this letter? So Jude was eager to write a letter about their common salvation to edify his readers, but this letter was never written. That's the one he wanted to write. And perhaps he felt that there was a need for some basic teaching about the Christian faith in the church before he could write that letter. So he interrupted this when he heard about false teachers. And so instead, he wrote this letter of warning to the churches, right? So remember, he originally wanted to edify the readers, but then when he heard about these false teachers, he wrote the book of Jude, right? It's basically one letter then, right? And he exhorted his readers to contend for the faith which was delivered through the original apostles, and they were called to recognize the false teachers who had infiltrated the church. You'll find that in verse 4. Also, he calls his readers to build themselves up in the faith, pray, and keep themselves in the love of God. And that's verse 20 and 21. And he devotes most of the letter to denunciation of the false teachers, finishing with some positive exhortations to snatch people from the fire of false teachings. That's verse 23. And he makes no attempt to prove the false teaching to be wrong, and that is obvious from his description of their behavior. The false teaching needed to be exposed. Jude did not see it enough simply to set out the truth and expect the church to see the difference. Okay, so remember, Jude is only one book, very, very easy to read. Go ahead and read this book, it's really good. So what was the nature of these false teachers that he's talking about? Well, Jude piles on the dreadful descriptions of these false teachers who have infiltrated the church using vivid metaphors and examples from the Old Testament. He gave 25 descriptions in 20, 20 some odd verses, and he basically said in verse 4 that they are ungodly men, people who pervert the grace of God into licentiousness. I don't even know what that word means. That's in verse 4. They deny Christ, also in verse 4, and they are like Sodom and Gomorrah. They act immorally, indulge in unnatural lust, verse 7, defile the flesh, verse 8, reject authority, verse 8, revile the glorious ones, and revile what they do not understand, which goes up to verse 10. He also says they destroy themselves as irrational animals, that's verse 10, walk in the way of Cain, verse 11, and fall into Balaam's error. They are blemishes on your love feast, verse 12, and boldly carouse together. They are waterless clouds, fruitless trees, wild waves casting up foam of shame. Now we're in verse 13. Wandering stars, grumblers, and malcontents. Verse 16. They follow their own passions, being loudmouth boasters. They flatter people to gain advantage and are scoffers, following ungodly passions, up to verse 18, and they set up divisions, verse 19, and are worldly people devoid of the Spirit. So this is all coming from just those verses I talked about of what Jude said about these false teachers. And, Jude summarizes their teachings in verse 4. He says their basic doctrine is to deny the person of Christ, and this is the most usual heresy, as in Colossians and all of today's cults. Their basic behavior is license, presuming on God's grace. So as Paul would say, they sin so that grace may be abound, and they receive their revelation from dreams rather than from God, and cause division and trouble in the church, being full of self and pride. So this kind of reminds you of the time when there was revelation receivers and there were people who were receiving false revelations too, right? And it's a very confusing time. So Jude saw the rise of these false teachers as fulfillment of apostolic prophecy, perhaps from 1 Timothy or 2 Peter, but these teachers were outwardly members of the church, and there was danger of them destroying it from within, and Jude is extremely severe against them, and it's clear that he is shocked by the immoral behavior, saying that they are like irrational animals. So Peter speaks about the same group of people in his second letter, but not quite as strongly as Jude. So it is difficult to identify the false teachers exactly, but there are some clues. Right, so the reference to Balaam may show some connection with the heresies in the church in Pergamum, which is Revelation 2:14, which involved false teachings and immorality. And most probably Jude is addressing an early form of Gnosticism, which was not fully developed until the 2nd century. And there seem to be two basic extremes of Gnosticism, asceticism and license. And these teachers were teaching license, using their freedom as an opportunity for the flesh. Right, so that's a type of teaching that's there, using their freedom for the opportunity to do something of the worldly nature. Okay, so what is the date of this writing? And we're not really sure about it, but they say anywhere from the dates, like this is pretty large, right? 60 to 140 AD, somewhere in there, have been suggested. And the evidence for early date is that since Jude was a half-brother of Jesus, he would have lived possibly until 80 AD at the latest. And assuming that he was younger than Jesus, he refers to what the apostles said to in verse 17, which would suggest a reasonably early date. So if Peter used Jude in writing 2 Peter, then Jude must have been written before Peter's death around 67 AD. So that's why they would say it would be earlier. Some people would say in like 60s AD. And the evidence for the later date is that if the false teaching was a form of Gnosticism, which did not develop fully until the 2nd century, the letter must have been written then, right, after 100 AD, right? And more recent evidence has shown that at least the roots of early forms of Gnosticism developed from the middle of the 1st century, and Jude may be addressing these. Also, the apostles are referred to in the past in verse 17, which would argue for a later date, but this argument is not conclusive, right? So it's anywhere from 60 to 140 AD, and a safe guess would be any time between 65 to 80. That's a safe guess. And depending on whether Peter used Jude or Jude referred to Peter, for more information, you're going to have to look into 2 Peter to see the similarities between the two, 2 Peter and Jude. Okay, and destination, where's this letter going? We're not even sure. There's no certainty over where the letter was written to. The letter is addressed to those who are called beloved in God the Father and kept for Jesus Christ, which really means all Christians everywhere in all times. However, it's clear that Jude is addressing a specific situation in a church which could apply to others through the ages. And the references to the Old Testament and Jewish Apocrypha would suggest a Jewish audience. So Antioch is suggested on the grounds that the church knew some of the apostles, and that's verse 18. Okay, so what is the structure of the letter? The letter is in fairly typical epistle structure. It begins with a greeting, followed by a statement of Jude's purpose in writing. And in the main part of the letter, he denounces the false teachers and foretells their doom. Right? Their doom is foretold in verse 15, 16. And in conclusion, he exhorts his readers to remain faithful and ends with a powerful doxology. Right? So it's very, very interesting. I hope you guys really like these types of looking into the background of these books kind of inspires you to read it. Remember, Jude, super short. It's very, very short. Right? And I hope it's something that you guys can take a look at it, read it, and see, like, think about the things that I talked about before you read it. And I think it'll be a big help to you guys also. Okay? So there it is, guys. That is the book of Jude. Hope you guys really enjoyed that word study, and it's something that inspires you to read the Bible a little bit more. But that means we're going to move into the song of choice for today on this wonderful Wednesday. And I listened to this. I heard this song while I was in a cafe, and the original song is by Mariah Carey called "Always Be My Baby." But I was listening to a cover, like a rock version of it, and it was so good. It's actually from a singer named David Cook, who won American Idol like a long time ago, like maybe 2008 or something like that, 2006 or 2008. And he did a cover of it. It's really, really good. Always Be My Baby is like an R&B pop cover. It's a pop song, but he made it into a rock song, and I really enjoyed it. So everyone, please welcome David Cook with Always Be My Baby.
We were as one, babe, for a moment in time. And it seemed everlasting that you would always be mine. Now you wanna be free, yeah, so I'm letting you fly. 'Cause I know in my heart, babe, our love will never die, no. You'll always be a part of me. I'm part of you indefinitely. Girl, don't you know you can't escape me? Oh, darling, 'cause you'll always be my baby. And we'll linger on. Time can't erase a feeling that's strong. No way you're never gonna shake me. Oh, darling, 'cause you'll always be my baby. Gonna cry, no, and I won't beg you to stay. If you're determined to leave, girl, I will not stand in your way. But inevitably, you'll be back again. 'Cause you know in your heart, babe, our love will never end. No, you'll always be a part of me. Don't you know you can't escape me? Ooh, darling, 'cause you'll always be my baby. And we'll linger on. Time can't erase the feeling that's strong. No way you're never gonna shake me. Ooh, darling, 'cause you'll always be my baby. I know that you'll be back, girl, when your days and your nights get a little bit colder. Oh, I know that you'll be right back. Oh, baby, believe me, it's only a matter of time. You'll always be a part of me. I'm part of you indefinitely. Girl, don't you know you can't escape me? Oh, darling, 'cause you'll always be my baby. And we'll linger on. Time can't erase a feeling that's strong. No way you're never gonna shake me. Oh, darling, 'cause you'll always be my baby. You'll always be a part of me. You will always be. Ooh, darling, 'cause you'll always be my baby.
And there it is. Great cover of Mariah Carey's Always Be My Baby. That's David Cook, winner of American Idol. Hope you guys really enjoyed that. Comment below if you've heard the song before. This is my first time hearing it, and I thought it was amazing, all right? So there it is, song of choice for today on this English Wednesday. Hope you guys enjoyed that, which leads us into the last segment for today. And of course, every Wednesday, it is Health is Happiness with Julius Miyumo over there in Australia. Hope you guys are really, really going to enjoy this. It's still on managing your weight. It's part 7, but it's going to talk about flexible dieting, all right? So everyone, please welcome Julius with Health is Happiness.
Hi everyone, Julius here, and welcome to the Health is Happiness segment. Here's where we discuss all the different ways we can improve health for a happy life, both physically and spiritually. This is episode 16, and today we're actually going to do one more segment on the topic of weight management. Now, this is a special extra episode that I decided to do after recalling a lesson done by a fellow Provi brother from America. Shout out to Mason Mendes. He did this really awesome lesson on flexible dieting, which I wanted to share with you guys today. And also, big congrats on your new push-up record. I think he did something crazy like 1,500 push-ups. Absolutely insane. But anyways, today's segment will be quite interesting given what we've been discussing in the last couple of weeks. So 2 weeks ago, I did an episode on managing your caloric intake, and I shared some simple ways to do that without having to count calories too much. However, for those who would like to take it a step further and be more granular and precise in managing the amount of calories one is taking, I think this segment will be very useful. So what is flexible dieting? First of all, it involves planning your menu for the entire week, including the times you're going to eat each of your planned meals, excluding your cheat day if you choose to have one. Second, as the name suggests, this dieting strategy allows you to cheat throughout the week. Now, sometimes you have situations where it's very impractical to stick to your diet 100%. For instance, let's say everyone's going out to lunch after Sunday service. Then you're going to end up eating the restaurant food instead of the meal you prepared in your weekly menu. Now, with flexible dieting, you are allowed to do that. That meal acts as a replacement for the lunch meal you previously planned. Then for the rest of the meals for that day, you adjust your caloric ratios for each macronutrient based off your pre-calculated daily needs. So, how do we do this? First of all, we start off by calculating something called our BMR. And this stands for basal metabolic rate. This is the number of calories your body needs to accomplish its most basic life-sustaining functions. Now we have an equation for this, so we just need to plug in some numbers. We'll need to plug in our weight, our height, and our age. I'll put a description of the equation below, and you can also search it up on Google. Just type in BMR equation. So, you want to make sure that your equation also matches the measurement system you're using. Once you make the calculation, you want to consider your level of activity, because this is a method of dieting that is constant throughout the whole week. So we have to account for how much activity we're doing throughout the week, and there's 5 basic levels. Depending on what our level of activity is, you will multiply your BMR with a particular number. So first of all, we have sedentary. So that's for the people who have desk jobs and do not do any exercise. Multiply your BMR with 1.2. Second, we have light activity. This category is for those who exercise 1 to 3 times per week. Here you'd multiply it by 1.325. Next, we have moderate activity. These are for people who exercise 3 to 5 times per week, and here you'd multiply it by 1.55. Next, we have very active, and that's for those who exercise 6 to 7 times a week, and for this you'd multiply by 1.725. Last of all, we have extremely active. almost no one will be in this category. That's for people who exercise 6 to 7 times a week and also have a physically demanding job, and they would multiply their BMR by 1.9. Now the final result that you get will give you your total daily energy expenditure in calories. Now, if you wanted to lose weight, you would decrease the amount by 20. And if you wanted to gain weight, suppose if you're bodybuilding, for example, you would increase it by 20%. Now, once you have this number, the next step is dividing up all those calories into your macronutrients. So that's your proteins, your carbs, and fats. Nice and simple. First thing that you'd need to consider is your protein intake. Now, the recommended consumption of protein is 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. To change that to calories, multiply that by 4. Next, we have fat. Now, I've already talked about how fat is an important macronutrient that's absolutely necessary in our diet. Fat is your friend when it comes to both gaining weight and losing weight. The thing about fat is that it keeps you full for way much longer, which can help prevent you from overeating, as long as you're mindful about measuring the caloric density of the fat you're consuming. So you want about 25% of your calories to come from fat. Generally speaking, saturated fats should be limited to 10% of that quantity, and the rest can come from monosaturated or polyunsaturated fat sources. Nuts, avocados, olive oil, and fatty fish are good examples. Now, everything else left over will be filled with carbohydrates, which includes your fruits and vegetables. Now, once you've sorted your ratios for your macronutrients, it's really a matter of figuring out what to eat. Here's where you want to pay attention to the nutritional label of your foods to figure out your macronutrient caloric densities. You can also always do a quick Google search for the answer. Each week, you have your menu planned. Doing meal preps is a really great way to help you stay consistent throughout the week, because you just have to cook it once, then you don't have to worry about it till the end of the week. Now, I really do want to emphasize that it's really important to check your nutritional labels. Otherwise, all the work that you've done until now will be rendered pointless. When looking at your carbs also, it's very important to subtract the calories from fiber, because your body actually cannot digest the calories in fiber. I do want to remind everyone who's keen on monitoring their calories very closely to download MyFitnessPal. This app is just phenomenal at making things much easier. Also, don't stress too much if you're not absolutely exact with your macro intakes. If you're off within 10%, you will still be able to reach your goals. So there you have it, folks. Now, before I close, there is something I want to continue to emphasize in this health segment. Nutrition and health is quite personal, and one thing won't always work for everyone, even if it works for a lot of people. There are the general facts that apply, like do not eat processed food, but there's so many factors that are highly specific to each individual. So I try my best to share balanced research, and since I'm not a certified expert in the field, I do want to mention that if anyone does have pre-existing health conditions, it's always highly recommended to consult a medical or nutritionist expert, because they can highly customize things according to your unique situation. So that's it for today's episode. And now we're finally moving on to a new topic. Big thanks once again to Mason for his really helpful insights, and I'm sure it will help a lot of people. Please drop a comment below if anything stood out to you, and thanks for tuning in once again, and see you next time.
And thank you so much, Julius, for another wonderful segment of Health is Happiness. And I'm sure a lot of people will really be able to understand from this. Like, sometimes you can't be so rigid with your dieting, and sometimes you got to have a cheat day and such too, right? Flexible dieting, I hope it's something that it really helped a lot of you guys out when it comes to managing your weight. Julius, great job as always. Hope you guys leave a comment for him too, okay? And there it is. That is the end of today's Wednesday podcast. Everyone have an amazing and awesome Wednesday and service tonight, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, you know. I'm on the Morning Star Drive, you know. I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when